It is a British-based band, London Beat, coming through with I've Been Thinking About You. And of course, this song, no doubt, claiming its history in the pages of incredible music. And it broke quite a few records at its time of release, coming out of their studio album, In the Blood, and it went on to chart in the top 10, in top 10 charts in over 10 countries, actually, over 10 territories, and doing incredibly well for the legacy of the group. That is how we begin our show this afternoon, with a little bit of that nostalgic flavor. London Beats, I've Been Thinking About You. It's just gone 10 past 1 o'clock, and I have been thinking about you, and hopefully you've had an incredible morning thus far and ready for the second half of the day as we kick off the full circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM. We've got lots by way of conversation on the cards today. We're going to be looking at some research outcomes that's delving into the latest alarming stats regarding school dropout rates, and we'll be in conversation with an education specialist around that. We're also going to be dipping into the world of creativity with stages, pages, screens, and more. And it's a revival of the timeless South African classic, You Strike a Woman, You Strike a Rock, and it's coming to the Lesedi Theatre, and we'll find out more from the director around that particular production. Also today, because it is a Thursday, we have a bit of a legal guide coming your way, and we're trying to understand the intersection of traditional marriage customs and modern legal frameworks in South Africa. And this conversation is on the back, of course, of everything that we have been privy to in the last 2 weeks or so regarding Isilo uMisizulu and I guess the drama would be the word. The drama that's been unfolding around his pending divorce, not divorcing, marrying, not getting married. And it's bringing a lot of things into question for a lot of people. And so we're going to try and weave our way through that conversation. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line. 086-000-2032 is the number that you can call us on. Let's take a quick pause and then we'll be right back.
Outsurance has another random fact for you. In 1999, a litre of petrol cost just under 3 rand. Now it's about 21 rand. It's scary how prices keep going up. In times like these, it's encouraging to know that Outsurance has got your back and is committed to saving you money on your car insurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Danica knows all about saving on her 2018 Haval H2.
I saved 455 rand. It was quick and easy.
Here's Lebu with her sweet 644 rand saving on her 2019 Mazda CX-3.
Gave me the best quote ever. My savings is 644 rand. Come join our insurance and save some money.
You heard it here first. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Life is too short for long-term grudges, but when it's the Soweto Derby, black and white confronts gold and black. The Buccaneers believe while Amakhosi still emphasize experience Mzansi's biggest football rivalry, Orlando Pirates versus Kaizer Chiefs, on Saturday, 1 February at 2 p.m. live on SABC1 and at 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
With Ford's Blue Sky offers, get a new Ranger XL from just $5,899 per month, including our optional service plan. 10% deposit, prime less 4.75%, 40% residual. Visit your trusted Ford dealer today for Blue Sky offers, where our Ford Family Guarantee comes standard. Limited time offer while stocks last. T&Cs apply.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
So we're going to try and get a better understanding around some research outcomes and a latest study that sheds light on alarming school dropout rates of the over 815,000 pupils from 6 provinces who sat down at the grade 8 desks to begin high school in 2019. Only over 207,000, or rather 207,000 just about disappeared before reaching matric. It's an alarming number, which meant that it left just over 304,000 that reached grade 12 in 2024 without repeating any exams. And this was according to some new research that was released by Stellenbosch University. And we've got joining us now Hendrik Makaneta, who's an education specialist, to help us understand perhaps, what is impacting these stats, and of course what should be done in future to ensure that the cohort, the total cohort that enters grade 8 ultimately goes on to graduate grade 12. How are you doing this afternoon, Hendrik?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much indeed for having me.
Thank you for the time. Much appreciated. Let's delve into this a little bit. 815,000, just over 815,000 that sat down at their grade 8 desks and began high school in 2019. Of that, just over 304,000 actually reached the grade 12 in 2023. Quite a significant difference between the cohort that enters the system at the beginning of high school and the total number that exits the system at the end of high school. Let's get an understanding as to, some of the base factors that might come into play here.
Well, to be quite honest with you, there are many factors. And we usually don't dwell much into all the factors due to the fact that every time a learner leaves a school, the school does not always keep track of where they are. And so some of the factors could be learners who, the so-called grade 10 crisis or the grade 10 problem. That is where the majority of our learners drop out. And some of them could be issues of teenage pregnancies. Others could simply be the fact that they are no more coping with their studies, and they tend to move to a TVET sector. And so, as the minister was saying the other day, it is not entirely true that all of them are dropping out completely from the system. Some of them are just unaccounted for because they are in the TVET sector. So they are no more studying with your day school. So there are just different factors which government is not able to track because they don't have a database of all of these learners. They don't conduct any exit interviews with the learners. The learners just disappear and no one knows where they are.
And for the benefit of my listeners who are listening and going, wait, but the math is not mathing. So there are some figures that I've left out in between here from that 815,000. So over 207,000 disappear before reaching matric, without the system really knowing where they have ended up or where they've gone. And just around 304,000 or so do progress, but progress with repetition. So they don't have a straight line to matric. They will repeat a grade here or there, and hence not really counted when we look at the overall figure. Something that's worrying, Hendrik, is, when you point out that the system doesn't keep track with the factors that come into play that affect dropouts of students, then how is the sector supposed to plan in order to accommodate these variables? And how does, the sector then begin to prepare even just the matriculants to be able to answer to what their needs might be? So if we have a large number, 207,000 kids that are disappearing, if we don't understand why they're disappearing, then how do we plug in order to in order to either reverse that disappearance or to cater for it so that their lives don't derail?
Definitely, that's a very good question. So it means we will not be able to resolve the problem because we don't know where they are, where all of these learners are. But I think, should we start a tracking system to say how many of those have failed the grade? Maybe they failed in grade 8 and they had to repeat the grade, and you don't see them at matric level on record time. If we can have such a system which is able to track them, but also track out those who are in TVET colleges, those who just left the school completely. Some of them could have been through a wide range of problems, social issues that they may face. I've mentioned the issue of pregnancy and so on. If we can have a clear system that tells us where each and every learner is at all material times, then we can be able to prepare better, because we will know that, okay, X number of learners are now in TVET colleges, and so it can help us to plan for the future.
Do these numbers, do these figures, this data reveal anything? Does it reveal anything about the challenges that are inherent within the South African education system?
Definitely. It also speaks to the inequality that we face in the country. If you look at the vast number of learners who are leaving the system. The majority of those who leave the system are often found in your quintile 1 schools. These are the no-fee schools which are based in poor communities. And so the challenges there are dire. People often say that a school is a microcosm of society. And it is true, because schools which are based in communities which are poverty-stricken, these social ills always find a way to creep into the school as well. That is why these unwanted pregnancies, are always found in those schools. That is why issues of crime and so on, drug-related problems, are always discovered. But of course, those are not the only schools. You do find such problems also in your affluent schools, but the ratio, it's not the same. It's not 1:1. You find that it exists a lot in our poverty-stricken areas.
Which is an unfortunate truth of South Africa right now, is that no one social problem in our country is isolated, right? It's all part of this interconnectedness of a host of problems that the country is currently facing.
Definitely. Which is why government must move with the necessary speed to ensure that the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, as well as inequality are addressed. And now the fourth biggest one is crime. Crime continues to be a very big problem in the country, which also affects in the main schools. And if government cannot address all of these main challenges that are faced by society, it will not be easy to root them out within school communities, because it starts first in the community, because learners are members of different communities before they become learners. And therefore, there is a need for government to not only put good policies on paper, but also to act, practically, to root out crime in our communities.
Are there certain regions, are there certain provinces that also show sort of a more worrying trend of either kids that drop out or kids that have disappeared from the system over other provinces, and is it consistent enough that it warrants for further investigation by the relative stakeholders to see what is happening in those particular regions and what needs to be done to address some of the problems?
Yes, definitely the biggest challenges are found in your rural provinces such as the Eastern Cape and Limpopo. And so if you look at Gauteng, for example, as an urbanized province, they tend to receive, a wide range of resources, even in their schools, compared to a province like Limpopo, where you find that resources are lacking. So that talks to the inequality that exists in the system. That even though you may have public schools in Limpopo as well as Gauteng, if you get into each and every class, you can see the differences they show. So if these provinces are not addressed, poverty in particular, as well as unemployment and the skewed distribution of resources is going to remain a challenge. Remember, practically each and every provincial treasury must be responsible for ensuring that they build more schools in their provinces, and so an economic hub such as Gauteng will probably generate more money than a province such as Limpopo. That is why their budgets are also not the same, in terms of how they must address issues of infrastructure.
I mean, there's so much to this conversation and so much to these findings by the Stellenbosch University, which ran this new research, because if we double back even, and I want to talk a little bit around overage learners as well, but if we double back to the points that we were making about kids who progress but with repetition, kids that had to repeat a grade or two. Part of the findings here was that oftentimes learners repeated grade 10 not once but twice. And that demographic being broken down to around 20% of the repeaters were girls and 30% were boys. When we hone in on this, I mean, should really the department and the various stakeholders and people like yourself in education who have a vested interest in education be really honing in on this kind of data so that it doesn't just become data for the sake of correlating data, but it becomes data for the sake of informing policy, for the sake of informing strategy and how the education sector navigates and plans around the various needs and the various issues that are plaguing pupils?
Definitely, the problem that you are talking about affects the learners who are quite older, who have been in the system for some time due to not passing a grade, and you find that their peers are already in grade 12 whilst they are still in grade 10. And these learners face one of the most difficult challenges because they are often stigmatized. And as a result, the output in terms of their performance is not always the best because of the stigma both from the learners as well as the teachers. There are teachers who can sometimes make fun of such learners because the learner has been there the previous grade. And if they are not strong mentally, some of them, it is this type of learners who end up, dropping out eventually and not reaching a matric. You often find that these learners have to now try by all means to complete their studies at a private college. And so I'm saying that these learners also need the necessary support. Government should really find proper ways and means to ensure that they keep these learners within the system, so that they too can be able to complete and create a future for themselves. And you are right, it talks directly to policy, how policy can be developed to ensure that we are able to reduce in the long run this high dropout rate that the system is experiencing.
I want us to just take a quick pause here, Hendrik, for the headline news. But if you're listening into the conversation and you want to weigh in, we always welcome your opinion and, of course, your unique perspective. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line. You're more than welcome to send through a voice note, or you can give us a shout on 086 000 2032.
Thank you, Bridget. In the news headlines, 4 suspects have been arrested for the murder of 3 men in Kanana, Orkney over the weekend. Northwest Police spokesperson Adele Mayberg says initial information indicates that a fight broke out between 2 groups that led to the kidnapping of 5 men at the tavern. Gauteng police are still searching for suspects who shot and killed a man outside the Lenasia Magistrate Court south of Johannesburg, and the Sudanese army has launched airstrikes on Al-Fashir, the last major city it controlled in North Darfur, hitting areas held by paramilitary rapid support forces. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
We're in conversation with education activist Hendrik Makaneta, and we are unpacking this new research by Stellenbosch University that sheds a little bit of light in as far as the dropout rates in South Africa, and of course what is called, well, the disappeared students in South Africa, those who enter grade 8 but don't quite make it to grade 12. And most of the over 207,000 pupils who disappeared from the grade 8 cohort, or who were unaccounted for, as the researchers termed it, are likely to have dropped out of school for a whole host of reasons, as we've uncovered here. Some social, some economic, some just, kids moving on from the state education system and moving into the IBE system, some unfortunately passing away, others moving into TVET colleges, others just really just dropping out for a host of reasons. And of course, part of the problem, as we've outlined with Hendrik, is that we have this data, but it seems as though this data is not really informing proactive solutions, firstly, on how we keep more of this entry cohort in schools in order for them to matriculate. But also, what do we do once we have this data? How do we then use this data in a more practical sense so that it's beneficial for the education system and in particular beneficial for students? We've got Hector in Mpumalanga on the line. How are you doing this afternoon, Hector? Hector? Oh, Hector is probably got us on mute. As we line up the other callers, let's go back to Henry. Hendrik, we were talking about, the sort of the grade 10 dropout rate, right? 20% for young girls, 30% for young boys. And even those who don't drop out, those who repeat, rather, it was the repeating rate, my apologies, those who repeat grade 10 and often repeating grade 10 not once but twice. Age becomes an issue, and you alluded to the stigma around that, being the older kid in grade 10 when all your peers have advanced. Are there targeted interventions perhaps that schools are using in order to address this?
School is left out on its own to deal with such challenges. And so, not all schools are able to give the proper or necessary support, to this kind of learners that we're talking about, who are now overaged in terms of the grade that they are in. But of course, there are some of the schools, in our interactions with schools, both in the public as well as private, we have seen that, they've got committees where specific teachers are responsible for ensuring that these learners receive ongoing support. But unfortunately, perhaps due to lack of resources in some of the schools, or in many of the schools, you don't have such support. They are just left on their own to fend for themselves, to find a way to exit on their own. So that actually creates a problem. That is why some of them, end up just leaving the system without progressing into grade 11 or grade 12.
Very unfortunate. Let's try a different line. Perhaps let's go to Mafikeng, see if Mpo is around. How are you, Mpo?
Hello, how are you, ma'am?
I'm good, thank you. Go ahead, Bob.
Yes. We're talking about almost senior or going to varsity. But a quick one on my side. I've got a niece who's repeating a grade 1 for the third time or fourth time. Mm-hmm. But I'm asking myself these questions that from early foundation, won't it affect the son on progressing to senior
yes,
levels?
From From early
I
foundation.
just wanted to pick on the professors.
Okay, we'll get Henrik to give a perspective on that. Thank you so much, Mpho. Hector, let's try you again in Mpumalanga. How are you?
Good in yourself, ma'am.
I'm great. Go ahead.
Yes, it's Bridget. I have a problem here. The class here is saying that they cannot trace the dropout. Yet, the very same TVET that is suspecting that most of the learners are going to is under the very same Department of Education, if I'm not mistaken, or higher education, but then this is that department. But then on my observation from where I am, I think most of these learners are dropping out because some of them are enrolling with the hope that in future they'll get a certification, because most of them are coming from the neighboring countries. That is one fact that I've noticed, especially in my surrounding community. Secondly, there's this issue of illegal mining, which is again associated with a high number of dropouts in my community. So I imagine that given the scale of illegal mining in South Africa, for how many in the country are actually partaking in those activities.
Okay.
And the reason why these rural communities are suffering such high number of dropouts is not necessarily because of the infrastructure, but it's because these rural provinces are very much close or adjacent to the borderlines of Mozambique and Lesotho and stuff. So that is mainly what I've noticed. And it's very much difficult for a person to move to places like Joburg or Western Cape to pursue education also without having proper documentation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for your perspective. And obviously, Hector speaking from his perspective in Mpumalanga and from what he's noticed in his community. I can't speak on the data, the factual data around whether or not there is a heavy influx of illegal students entering the South African school system, but that's just from his personal perspective. The interesting thing that he also brings up, Henrik, here is that on TVET, and you asked the questions, on TVET colleges part of the education department, and shouldn't the two departments be speaking to each other?
Definitely, that is what we have always been advocating for. And I saw for the first time the new basic education minister, Mr. Bue Gwahube, had bilaterals with her counterparts within the terrain of higher education, where she was able to meet with the deans of different faculties of education in all our universities. That meeting has taken place, and I think that is a good start, because for too long there's always been this gap between the DBE and the Department of Higher Education. And that manifests itself also if you look in terms of the performance of learners at basic education level. Learners who do very well in basic education, they can get into a university with level 7s in mathematics and science and other subjects. But you find that when the learners are at university level, they struggle to complete a junior degree, such as a BSc, which is for 3 years. They struggle to complete that in 3 years' time or on record time. Out of 12, research has also showed that out of 12 students who are admitted into a university, only 5 are able to graduate on record time. And that can certainly be traced back to the gap that exists between higher education and basic education. And I think that if we can close that gap, that will actually give us an idea of how many learners are in the TVET sector, because higher education keeps its own record, but also they've got their own way of admitting students. Once you get in there, you are a student, you are part of the rest. They also don't separate students to say this one might have not completed grade 10 or this one has completed. But remember, there are also grade 12 learners, those who have done grade 12, who also go into the TVET sector, including those with only grade 10. So they don't separate the students. So hence, it is not, that data is not there to say how many are dropouts and how many completed matric. It's just students. They are just taking them as students, all of them,
Yeah.
to the higher education sector.
Just as a final note, perhaps your professional perspective. Our earlier caller, whose grandchild has now repeated ECD grade R 3 times or so, and whether or not that affects later progress in some ways, besides the fact that you might be behind from your peers.
I think that this probably is a rare case. I don't think that it's happening to many learners in the foundation phase. Perhaps if we could get further reports, because these learners, if they have to repeat a grade, usually at the school there should be, someone who works with the learners of, in this particular case, a learner who repeats. There should be, under normal circumstances, an educational, social worker or psychologist who is able to provide the necessary support, but also to give reports. Remember, these learners are also assessed by this educational psychologist, where they can check what could be the problem, what led to, why did the learner fail, and so on. Why is there any reason why the learner had to do this grade R 3 times? I mean, there must be a special report that is written, but it does not really happen a lot with the rest of it. A learner can repeat once, maybe, yes, and then the next year they are able to progress.
Yeah.
But learners are not the same. I'm not sure at this stage what could be the real challenge in that case of the grandchild of the scholar.
Hendrik, we have to leave it there this afternoon, and thank you so much for your perspective. That was Hendrik Makaneta, who's an education activist. It's fast approaching 1:45. We're going to take a quick pause here, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to change focus a little bit, and we are going to get into a conversation around the revival of the timeless South African classic, You Strike a Woman, You Strike a Rock, and that's coming to the Lesedi Theatre.
Owning a small or medium-sized business takes courage, skill, and determination. The Clientele Legal Business Plan is there to protect, guide, and assist your business in managing the legal risks. Let us handle your labor matters, employment contracts, CCMA referrals, and so much more. Our team of professional lawyers are standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 42770. That's SAFM to 42770. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Natal Rich Boys want to demonstrate their wealth with a win to reach the last 16. But the Buccaneers say they will illustrate why they are the reigning champions. This is the Nedbank Cup round of 32. Richards Bay FC battles it out with Orlando Pirates FC this Sunday, 26 January at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Your best year starts at Dis-Chem with unbeatable deals for the whole family. Save R29.98 when you buy 2 packs of Softy 18 toilet rolls for just R200. Get 20% off all Sunlab products. Save R79.98 when you buy 2 Sanex shower gels or kids foam baths for only R100. Shop in-store and online for the lowest prices on the widest range of products. Now on until 16 February. Dis-Chem Pharmacies. Better health starts here.
Stages, pages, screens, and more on The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
So it was originally crafted back in 1986 by the renowned Phyllis Klutz, and it is back now, a powerful tribute to the woman who fought against apartheid. The iconic You Strike a Woman, You Strike a Rock, Watinta Bafazi, Watinta Mbogoto, is debuting at the Lesedi Theatre come the 23rd of February. We're catching up now with the director, Rorisang Mutuba, who joins us on the line. How are you doing this afternoon, Rory?
I'm well, thank you, Bridget. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you very much. What a wow. Reprising You Strike a Woman, You Strike a Rock. It just dawned on me that, this saying is so synonymous, obviously, with the history of South Africa, but there's been generations that have not actually interacted with the production, including myself.
Yes. I mean, I think it's so wonderful that the Joburg Theatre is taking this on, and what's wonderful is that it's a set work, So as much as we're going to have audiences come in on Fridays and Saturdays, the main audiences are students who are going to come to watch it and consume it. And I think that's very special because it's such a powerful piece. And to know that we're going to have learners who are going to be studying it and unpacking it and bringing it to life again, I think that's really special and exciting.
I mean, I didn't even realize that it's a set piece. So is it a set piece right now? At which grades?
Well, it's going to be from grade 10 to matric. So what they were previously studying was Albert, and this is now what the curriculum is now shifting to, which is just wonderful that now we get to look at that era and this protest theatre classic through the eyes of women, and it's such an iconic piece. So, and the fact that students get to study it and then come and watch it, I think that's also incredible.
Talk to me about the 2024 rendition or reprisal of the production. Does it in any way sort of take liberties to adapt and center itself in quote-unquote modern-day South Africa and some of the more current issues that are plaguing women?
Well, absolutely. I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing as a production, to make it contemporary and grounded in what girls and women are dealing with today. But obviously we want to still honor the original work and the original piece. And what's wonderful about it is in trying to marry the two times together is that you realize that the themes in this play are universal and they're still relevant in times today. So when we're talking about equality, when we're talking about freedom, we're talking about justice and love and survival. Those themes are still things that we are tackling today. When we talk about gender activism, that's what we're still dealing with today. So I believe that it's still going to resonate. And obviously we will here and there find ways to make it a more contemporary piece, especially for a younger audience. But we do want to honor the amazing work that we've been given.
So the other wower, as the young kids would say about this particular one, is the fact that, again, we so know the slogan, right? We chant it, we use it, we know the context of it, we know the political events around it, but we know very little about the actual synopsis of the play.
Well, I think, as you said, the slogan is very famous, and it's managed to stand the test of time as it should. Very briefly, the play, maps the lives of three female characters. They're all in formal trades and working and selling on the side of the street, and selling chickens, oranges, fit cook, that sort of thing. And on like a very feisty Friday night, and they're breadwinners, and they're really dealing with the desperate struggle for material survival in a time where they weren't allowed to, and they are, the heads of their family and the hearts of their family at the same time. And what's fun about the play is that even though it's a three-hander, it only has three characters in terms of the women that you see on stage, they actually embody many characters. So if there's a male police officer, then one of the characters takes on that. If there's an actual chicken, then one of the characters takes on that. If there's a young boy crying, then, so it's a wonderful play in terms of an entertainment value because we get to see many characters but in the bodies of three women.
I mean, listen, I think it's definitely one that, everybody would love to see. And hopefully at some point after you are done with your run at the Lesedi Theatre, there'll be a further conversation with the theatres of Joburg to take this on a circuit to other venues.
Oh my gosh, Bridget, from your lips. Can you speak to them?
Well, I do have an ear with a creative director.
You do, right? I think you do. I think that's always the dream, right? You always want to put on a production, hope that it resonates, and I believe that it will, and then you want to travel with it. Yeah. You want to share it with other people, and I think that theatre is such an enjoyable art form, and people sometimes don't feel that they have access to it. So we can bring the theatre to them, especially with such an incredibly important piece. That would be really wonderful. I know my actors would love it also.
Absolutely.
So,
Listen, Rory Sang, thank you so much for the time, and we look forward to this production. As they say, break a leg come opening night, and who knows, we might just galvanize there and start dropping James Ngobo a few WhatsApps to say, it must be more than just the Lesedi Theatre. That was director Rory Sang Matuba, and that play, You Strike a Woman, You Strike a Rock, Watinta Bafaz, Watinta Mbogoto, is debuting at the Lesedi Theatre from the 23rd of February until the 9th of March. We chuckle around James Ngobo, but he was actually on the show last week, Friday. He's the artistic director of the Joburg City Theatres as a collective, and he's got some interesting things on the schedule for the 2025 season. So you definitely want to keep your eye on that. Some new productions, some old seasoned productions also being revived, and a lot of thought-provoking and social interrogating pieces as well that he says that he's bringing to the stage alongside his collaborators. It's just gone 10 to 2 o'clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM.
Just last month, it was December, the season to be merry, or December, for those who know that it's not just a month, but a lifestyle. Now it's January and life is threatening watching financially. There's back to school and your own goals, and January is on everyone's lips.
Mara, you can get the relief you need right now and start the year strong with the personal loan from Nedbank with access up to 400,000 Rand. Search Nedbank Personal Loans and get a loan that offers you more. Nedbank. See money differently. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
A quick catch-up now with award-winning LGBTQI plus activist and media personality Sinenzolo Mondi, who is an activist but also a renowned media personality, and who really champions and advocates work in the LGBTQI plus community. And Sinenzolo is also nominated for the third annual National GBV Awards. And we're here today to halala you, but also to just catch up and find out, what's been going on in as far as the traction around some of these conversations. How are you doing, Sinenzolo?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Bridget?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much. Before we even get to your nomination around your work, let's talk about the importance of, continued focused and dedicated work when it comes to advocating for LGBTQI plus rights. We have incredible rights in this country, but we're still a long way from seeing them sort of fulfilled in practice in a way that impacts lives positively on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. You put it so well. You say you have the rights, you have all the paperwork and the policies. But then when it comes to the work on the ground, we still have a very long way to go. Hence, we have people like me, activists in the field, to just advocate for this kind of work and LGBTQI rights, because you won't believe it, even in 2025 you still get incidences of hate crime. You still get incidences of just members of the LGBTQ community being discriminated against in their communities, in their schools. I feel like when the fact that we have not normalized, lack of a better word, that the LGBTQ community is part of the community at large, then our work is far from being over.
Absolutely. And the most important part of the work is in community. What remains sort of the challenge there for activists like yourselves who are on the ground?
Oh my goodness. It's so mind-boggling, because I'm at a point whereby I'm like, when will this fight end? Because because as part of the organization that I'm working with, we do community engagements whereby we invite your elders, we invite just members of the community just to teach them about LGBTQI culture. And you'll be so shocked. They'll still be saying DSTV community, LGBTQ, They don't even know what that LG stands for. It's just so mind-boggling that people are just so ignorant, and they feel like even in 2025, being gay or lesbian or queer or transgender is an African, and it's not human,
There's been a sort of a concerted effort when you look globally and even continentally, right? And the reversal of human rights. And we've had our own issues with some of our African brothers and sisters across the borders, and some of the sort of stringent, harsh laws that have been passed in the last year or two that are detrimental to the LGBTQI plus community. Do those conversations also filter into South African communities in the sense where people go, Nina, you're always looking for rights and equality, but do you see, Uguti, the rest of the world is moving in our favor? The rest of the world agrees with us.
Yeah. You know what? Like it or not, we are a global community, So South Africa is not just standing alone somewhere in some Pluto or Mars. We're still part of this global community. And yes, we've made some huge strides in South Africa, especially being an African country, because we all know that in our other African counterparts, you get arrested for just
death,
influencing someone to be gay. Now, in my mind, I'm like, how do you influence someone to be gay, lesbian, queer, or transgender? So, yes, in South Africa, we've made some great strides. We still have a long way to go, especially being an African country. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, listen, before we run out of time, Sinenzolo, you've been nominated now. You've got 2 prestigious nominations this year, the 3rd Annual National GBV Awards. Tell me a little bit about this platform.
So the awards honor individuals, or rather activists, that are on the field just fighting the scourge to end gender-based violence. And of course, for me to be nominated in this category is the work that we do in terms of advocating for these rights in the LGBTQI plus culture. Because we must know that we as the Rainbow community are part of this community. Like as long as we're still part of the community, we face the same issues. So these awards honor then those activists that are fighting to end, or rather maybe not even end it, but then to make it easier for LGBTQI community just to exist freely and to exercise their rights. And we all know that GBV is a very huge issue in South Africa, not only for straight people, but also for the Rainbow Gang. We still are part of this community. We go through the same issues as everyone else.
Absolutely. And I think, the LGBTQI plus community perhaps even on a worse footing, right? Because the stigma of having to come and talk, let's say, for instance, if you find 2 gay males in a relationship and now having to come and first deal with the stigma of people going, well, but, you're 2 guys, work it out. So you don't even have that benefit of being in a heterosexual situation where you can come and speak to somebody if there is something that's happening. Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck for the 3rd Annual National GBV Awards, and hopefully your work and dedication gets much due recognition come the evening, and continue the fight. I know it can be an exhaustive one, but we need the likes of yourselves to keep amplifying the voices of those who might feel voiceless at times. That was award-winning LGBTQI plus activist and media personality Sinenzolo Mondi. It's 2:00. It's time for us to catch up with the top of the hour news. And of course, remember that theft, accident, and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. And you can get a quote today by simply SMSing car to 43187.
Thank you, Bridget. Top stories at 2. Concerns over the destruction of public works infrastructure, and Sudanese army launches airstrikes in Al Fashir. For SFM News, I am Onda Lambana, and a very good day. The Public Works and Infrastructure Department in Pretoria has raised concerns about the rampant destruction of its infrastructure. This includes the theft of aluminium cables as well as damage to traffic lights and railway lines. The department spokesperson, Lennox Mabaso.
The department cannot rule out the possibility of these criminal thugs being organized and also being linked to some syndicate that is involved in selling the scrap metal to dealers for cash. The department continues to raise concern at the flourishing scrap metal industry and its relationship with material acquired through theft, which impact the economy and the critical infrastructure.
Gauteng police are still searching for suspects who shot and killed a man outside Lenasia Magistrates Court south of Johannesburg. On Tuesday, the 27-year-old victim was allegedly waiting to testify as a witness in an ongoing murder case, which was being heard at the time when the incident occurred. It's understood that the man was approached by two unknown men and was shot dead in what police say was a targeted hit. Police spokesperson Mavela Masondo.
Police are on the lookout for two suspects who allegedly shot and killed a 27-year-old male outside the Lenasia Magistrates Court on Tuesday, the 21st of January 2025. The deceased was a witness in an El Dorado Park murder case that was set for trial today. It is reported that the deceased was standing outside the court when he was accosted by two armed suspects who shot at him without saying a word. He was declared dead on the scene.
Disgruntled members of the Bapalane tribe in Ramakoko stand near Britson Northwest are expected to picket outside the Anglo Platinum Mine headquarters in Rosebank, Johannesburg this afternoon. They will hand over a memorandum of demands to the mine's management. They accuse the mining company of extracting minerals and not using the proceeds to develop the area. Hopolang Morake represents the Bapalane SMMEs.
We have furnished them with a number of issues which are of a grave concern regarding our dissatisfaction, and this action is fueled by the ignorance to that. So the community, the collective masses of our people have decided that we should all rally and go to picket so that our dissatisfaction can set a clear tone.
The Eastern Cape traditional leadership institutions as well as national and provincial COCTA authorities are meeting at the East London Convention Centre. They are discussing concerns and challenges affecting male traditional circumcision. This meeting is prompted by the death of 29 initiates in the last summer initiation season. COCTA MEC Zolile Williams says the meeting also intends to plan accordingly for the winter initiation season.
There needs to be immediate actions taken in order to ensure that the tradition does not continue to kill young men. And we would need the participation of kings and their direction. And we want to introduce plans for the winter season as early as possible. So that would require us interacting with everyone in the traditional leadership sector so that they help us and we together move forward towards improving traditional circumcision.
The Sudanese army has launched airstrikes on Al Fashir, the last major city it controls in North Darfur, hitting areas held by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Hundreds of civilians have been killed and tens of thousands displaced as fighting continues in the besieged city. The BBC's Kalkideni Baltal has the details.
Reports from El Fashir say fighter jets targeted positions held by the Rapid Support Forces on Wednesday. The RSF launched long-range artillery shells towards parts of the city where the army is based. 2 days ago, the RSF announced a 48-hour ultimatum for army soldiers to surrender their weapons and leave the city, indicating an imminent offensive. The army vowed to resist any attack. El Fashir, under an RSF siege since May last year, is a major humanitarian hub where hundreds of thousands who fled from towns and villages in Darfur are seeking shelter. There are fears for their safety if intense military campaigns are underway.
Recapping the top story, the Public Works and Infrastructure Department in Pretoria has raised concerns about the rampant destruction of its infrastructure. This includes the theft of aluminium cables as well as damage to traffic lights and railway lines. I am on Delambana for SFM News headlines at 2:30.
And that's the news with Ondela for this hour. Remember that theft, accident, and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by OUTsurance Essential. And you can get a quote today by SMSing car to 43187. So this year, make it your goal to save on the insurance for your older car. With OUTsurance Essential, you get up to 1 million rand liability cover. So if you cause an accident, the other car could be covered for up to 1 million rand. You can also add motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical and electrical breakdowns. Get saving with OUTsurance Essential for unfinanced cars that are older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000. SMS car to 43187. That's car to 43187. OUTsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP, and T's and C's do apply.
Compliments for 2025, Mangani. Call me Mabel Goals because I'm coming for it all this year. Body, relationship, and financial goals. With my Just Invest account, financially I'm cruising. 2 more to go. You know any available Prince Charming voice man?
I've got you, Mabel. Sorry. Mara, you can also be like Mabel and earn up to 8.25% in interest to start the year right. Open yours via the Money app today. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. Promo rates apply. Go to nedbank.co.za for more information.
The Natal Rich Boys want to demonstrate their wealth with a win to reach the last 16. But the Buccaneers say they will illustrate why they are the reigning champions. This is the Nedbank Cup Round of 32. British Bay FC battles it out with Orlando Pirates FC this Sunday, 26 January at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Tell me why do we believe such a lie? That love, oh love is blind. How come we fall in love at first sight? Baby, I'm gonna take you back in the day. Loving you old-fashioned way. Gonna make it less complicated. Let me show you what real love is all about. I'm gonna turn your life around. In my hands, your heart is safe and sound. Oh, baby, trust me with your heart. Let me play the part. All the lover who will never break it apart. Oh, baby. We will never break apart. Surely we'll be together to eternity. I guarantee to give you all the best of me, baby. Surely we're meant to be. Surely we'll be together to eternity. I guarantee to give you all the best of me, baby. Surely we're meant to be. Surely we'll be together to eternity. I guarantee to give you all the best of me.
All right, Malika coming through with the best of me. We're taking things nice and easy this afternoon. It's just, I don't know, we're just trying to have a very relaxed day. There's so much that's going on. So, we're just doing our part to try and ease some of the chaos in the world around us. So we thought we'd have this conversation because in part we're busybodies. And we like to be in people's business, including, of course, the king himself, Misuzulu Gwaziletini, who we know that in the last 2 weeks or so, there's been a lot of drama that has unfolded within the royal household and found its way to our TV screens and our radios. We're all trying to understand just the complexities around some of the issues that are plaguing the king at the moment, and more his personal issues, the issues surrounding his marital status, his marital issues. And it's really brought into the fore again the complexities of our legal systems in the country, right? Because we know that on the one hand, we have customary marriages. On the other hand, we have civil marriages. And we've often had this conversation with legal experts who focus on family law in particular around how we can navigate this. And what's consistently come out is that we are all very confused about how these two interplay and what is needed for the other to exist versus the other. And so we thought we'd use this opportunity just to have a conversation with a cultural expert, Professor Musa Kulu, about, what's unfolding right now in KZN and what we need to understand. How are you doing this afternoon, Prof?
I'm doing quite well, and how are you doing?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much for the time. We much appreciate it. So the king's marital issues have really become everyone's issues at this point. Because he's brought us to a conversation that we often find ourselves at as South Africans, and it still seems as though we have no real clear path of a way forward when it comes to customary marriages and civil marriages. There's still a lot of confusion around those two.
Well, yes, there is confusion at societal level, but those two are regulated. In fact, there's a third one, which is like religious marriages, such as you find among the Muslims.
Yeah.
And so on. That's regulated by another act. But the key acts, legislation that regulate marriages in South Africa is the 1961 Marriages Act and the 1998 Recognition of Customary Marriages Act. What is compulsory is that all marriages must be registered at Home Affairs. Now, before 1998, there was a leeway for customary marriages to be taken as having happened based on the event of the wedding day having taken place and so on. But you know what would happen if there were disputes? Then there was no legal basis to can sort out the dispute. And that's why then this 1998 Act was enacted. And Sections 3 and 4 of that Act is very clear on what happens in terms of customary marriages. But civil marriage is regulated in terms of the 1961 Act. And it is clear that once a man and a woman are married, then through civil marriage, there is no way you can take another wife legally. But as I say, before 1998, traditionalists would take a wife and so on and register that nowhere, but traditionally would have been taken as being married.
Yeah.
Because of the evidence of the wedding day.
And I think that is where the confusion lies, right, Prof? Because even though these two acts do exist and they are recognized by South Africa and our constitutional boundary, but the fact that one ultimately seems to take a precedence, because as you've just said, once you are married civilly, there's no way that you can then take a second or third wife. Is this where the confusion lies? Because it almost seems like a lot of society understands it, and even sometimes you'll hear legal experts skirt on the line of, you can be married civilly, and if you go and negotiate and get permission, a lot of people seem to put the weight on as long as you have permission.
Well, the permission applies to the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act. That's why the permission is needed from the wife. If you take one wife through customary marriage, then you want to take a second wife, you need the permission of the first wife in writing. And you may have also to submit to a magistrate or a judge how you are going to divide your assets.
Yeah.
Before your marriage is recognized, registered at Home Affairs. In terms of the Civil Marriages Act, what you will need to do, you must dissolve or change the Civil Marriages Act to a customary, the civil marriage to a customary marriage, if you want to take a second wife. So that is why the Zulu King is simply unable to take a second wife, because he is still married to that one wife of his, Queen Gamaisela.
Yeah.
Through civil marriage.
And tell me this, as you said, that and this was brought up right when on Monday, when sort of these court proceedings, that urgent hearing was heard in the Maritzburg courts. A lot of analysts were talking around the option to dissolve the civil marriage, because the understanding is that Queen Gamaisela had already understood that she's entering into a polygamous union,
potential polygamous.
Potential, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we take it for granted as Africans, that our kings will ultimately marry multiples. So it becomes almost like an understood that you are getting into what could be this situation. So, so what then happens in this case where a lot of people will stand on that argument and say, but she knew that she was getting into this traditional and cultural setup. So what is now the issue with dissolving this marriage in order to accommodate the other marriages? We're going to get into him wanting an outright divorce and what that means for tradition, but from that perspective of what is the issue in dissolving the marriage and then restructuring it as a customary marriage?
Well, what is unfolding there with the court case was that because the king and his lawyers then said there was not going to be a marriage happening soon between him and the Nomzamo, yes. Then the judge said the agency part of it was dismissed, but she could still go back to court and file it not on an agent basis, because the other issue that came was that the marriage between the king and Nomzamo was not perfected. They had not yet reached the marriageable stage.
Okay.
It was only the lobola and then the announcement. So, and I don't think that is going to happen tomorrow or Sunday, but looks like it's going to happen during February. They will still have, for reasons of recognition, if the divorce is not yet through, they will still have to They can have an event, but they cannot register it as a marriage in terms of the recognition of the Marriage Act, the Customary Marriages Act.
Yeah.
So they cannot until the civil marriage is dissolved, either through consensual dissolution or through divorce. Yes.
It's not very common also for an African monarch to go through a Western system like divorce. It's sort of, it's happened once before from what I understand within the Amazulu lineage, but it's not the common practice. Does this lead us to an interesting intersection of modernity versus tradition now? Because when you look at uMisuzulu, for instance, we all assume he was probably raised far more Western than he was raised to relate more with Amazulu traditional culture, from what we know from the outside looking in. I could be very wrong. And so does this raise questions about the intersectionality of Western ways with African tradition and culture, especially in the royal context?
Well, yes, definitely. But, once you become a king, your personal options become very limited. Because you are entering an institution whose rules and regulations, especially through customs and traditions, has already been predetermined for many centuries. And you cannot just decide to change it because you don't like it. And that is the power of traditional systems, that when we urban people and modern people are frustrated by our daily rights and all these things, so the economy and everything, when December time comes and you go back to your rural area, you feel like no here, because people are still, maintaining the old ways of life. And a lot of urban people like that, because you look at a rural family and from outside it looks perfect, it's old style and so on, as against our urban lives. But the intersection was bound to happen, because of once missionization started happening in the 1800s, and once schooling, formal Western schooling started happening, once industrialization, modernization, urbanization, people moving to townships, and all of those, it was bound to happen that we are going to live in a society where the Western way of living is deemed to have more weight than our own traditional ways of living, because the traditional ways of living don't have much economic value. It's more of sentimental value. And people will be always, they'll tend to gravitate towards modernity. And for the king, he could have been raised, he went to live in America at some stage and so on, which is good. But when he becomes a king, all of that become insignificant, because it's like becoming a judge. Once you're a judge, the musical aspect of it falls away, because it's a predetermined environment of how you behave, how you reduce your presence in social activities, because people will come to you when they have problems and all of those. So he entered that. Then he has to try to, while understanding the Western way, also be aware that he's actually operating within a traditionalist system. What happened was that when he became king in 2021 or late 2021, early 2022, there was a rush to get him a wife, because even before President Cyril Ramaphosa had given him a certificate, the Zulu customs and cultures and traditions don't allow for a situation where a king is not married. So they ran to Home Affairs quickly to get a civil marriage, which happened, and then that is her power at the moment. She's got the marriage certificate. And as long as it is there, she can be gatekeeper legally.
So, and interesting you say that once you become king, right, you almost, even if you were raised Western, which I think will probably be the scenario moving forward, because we can assume that Mrs. Zulu's lineage is going to be exposed to Western culture, Western ways like he was, and even more so given the context of the world that they are growing up in. But as you point out, once you become king, you become regulated by tradition. So then are there no ways of working around these issues in a way that still respects tradition and maybe even still recognizes a little bit of that bleeding into Westernness? Because, you know, people will mouth ajar saying the king has filed for divorce because it's something that you don't really hear of.
Yes, it's rare. As I say, it's complicated now by the fact that all marriages in South Africa have to be registered now, which was not the case before 1998. And so you cannot say you are married to a woman and it's not registered anywhere. It must be at the Home Affairs Register of Marriage. And that is what has complicated his situation. Because even though now he wants to go the route of a traditional customary marriage, he still has to dissolve the civil marriage that he has. Even if the first wife had been, as I said earlier, had been married to him through customary marriage, he would still need her written permission in terms of the 1998 Act so that to perfect his marriage. But I emphasize again, they can have an event, but seeing that the matter is in front of the courts or was in front of the courts, they cannot easily call it a wedding day.
Yeah.
For example, because then the lawyers of Kamaisela will simply go back to court and say the lawyers of the king were lying under oath, or the king was lying under oath when that case was presented on Monday.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, you know, this brings us to really just an interesting junction as a society, and so much for us to start interrogating around how these two worlds are going to collide moving into the future, because it's going to become more of a, you know, a normalcy than it becomes something that is a rarity given where we are. I'd love to, if you're listening to our conversation, also hear your perspective on it on 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line, and 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on. The intersections really of culture and traditional marriage customs versus modern legal frameworks and westernization, and how do you think that African kings and queens should be moving through these transitions that are bound to happen? We're going to take a quick break for the headline news, and then we'll come back on the other side and just deal 5 more minutes with my guest before we get into Side by Side.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Thank you, Bridget. In the news headlines, Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Gwede Bandashe, says illegal mining is a war on the economy. He was speaking during a media briefing on the mine's health and safety statistics. The Public Works and Infrastructure Department in Pretoria has raised concerns about the rampant destruction of its infrastructure. This includes the theft of aluminium cables as well as damage to traffic lights and railway lines. And the U.S. Defense Department is sending 1,500 more troops to the Mexican border as the Trump administration cracks down on immigration. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
We are on the tail end of our conversation with Professor Musa Qulu, who's a cultural expert, and just trying to weave our understanding around these crossroads that King Misuzulu Kazeletini finds himself on, of course, with that back and forth between himself and the Queen at the moment regarding the what I guess is a pending divorce from Queen Ntokozo Kamaisela and that suspended wedding. It's suspended today, by tomorrow could not be suspended, with his third fiancée, Nomzamo Mieni, and bringing us to an interesting place where modernity and culture are now colliding. Prof, are these conversations that I think, or should these be conversations that kingdoms and royals, particularly of an African context, should be proactively be having around the various scenarios now where the dualities will have to interplay? And I'm not even saying might, because the world is moving and tradition and culture moves and evolves with its people. So these are eventualities that these dualities are going to clash and intersect.
Well, they will. Look, my sister, last year I published a book on kingdoms, and the democratic dispensation in South Africa. Because the arrival of democracy in 1994 simply protected the traditions more than making it difficult for traditions to continue. That's why the 1998 Act under President Nelson Mandela had to be enacted to also protect women who usually would become victims in a polygamous situation which is unregulated. And so it's regulated now. The regulation still says that you have to follow your custom, but the key is that it must be registered, and that is where the key is. That every marriage must be registered. And what will happen in future, as I see it, is that in the past there was something called, if you're a man staying in Soweto and your rural areas, what was at Belmont, you would have a wife in Soweto and a wife in Belmont, maybe 2 or 3. It used to easily happen. So you will have this duality continuing right into the future, and even the legislations may have to be adjusted a little bit to move along with time while not disturbing the continuity of traditions.
Yeah, and it will take a very proactive conversation, I think, from the respective parties who are involved in this to have what some would call a come to Jesus moment, because we can't simply say it is tradition.
Oh yes, the problem with tradition is that it is perceived to be rigid. And that is what makes people to relax when it comes to the issues of tradition.
Yeah.
But tradition can also be quite negative. You saw in terms of the land ownership, for example, issues, or allocation of land. At some stage, women had to get some kind of mail if they go to the chief and they want to be allocated a piece of land. You simply could not do it. As a woman, you're not given a plot or anything if you come alone. So that has been removed now. So you have to look also at the issue of human rights, which is our constitution, the basis of our constitution, to say, are we, protecting all the rights of everyone?
Yeah.
So it's a very tight rope that South Africa is walking, trying to balance the past with modernity and the future.
Absolutely. I just want us to jump to quick voice notes there, Prof, let's jump to Rich in Durban as we wind down the conversation. Rich?
Hi, Bridget. Yes. In my view, just put it informally, the king, the king should never have gone near anything near a civil marriage. Because a king by its nature, the kingdom, the royalty by its nature is what it is from where it originated. The king should never be entangled in all these things. He should never have gone anywhere near this.
Yeah.
In my view. in my view. And then going forward, for the rest of us commoners, really, this thing of I hear legally it's a tightrope with to register on marriages and so on. Going forward to avoid all these problems, to go back into the future, do not go anywhere near home affairs. Of course, then what happens is that the person you are marrying in the traditional way then can never change their surname because you're not going anywhere near home affairs. But
Rich,
it is what it is.
Thank you for your comments, Rich. Let's go to voice notes quickly.
Hello, South Africa. It's Tammy in East London. We'll say how much the colonization, how much damage it has done. Now we're even confused about our own customs. We still need to be interpreted by foreigners, by white people. Why is it so difficult now to understand this temple? Why is it so difficult now? I'm not.
All right. Why is it so difficult to understand Isitembu? Prof, just your passing nugget as we say goodbye?
Well, I understand your caller. I think he's right. But at that time, I think in 2021-22, there was just a spirit of excitement. And something had to be done quickly. You know, the traditional marriage takes the path to the actual marriage takes a long time, months if not years. So it had to happen quickly. But in terms of why we're now not understanding this term, no, we are. The issue is that there's a constitution in the country which must protect everyone.
Yeah.
Because in polygamous marriages, there would always be issues of abuse of this or that one. And in the absence of a legislated framework, the courts would not have been able to settle those disputes.
Absolutely. Prof. Musa Kulu, thank you so much for the time this afternoon. And Prof is a cultural expert. And our sincere apologies as well for the audio there at times. Prof was in a windy area, as you could hear the wind coming through. We're running late. We apologize once again. We're going to take a break for that. And then we come back on the other side and we get into side by side.
Specsavers now looks after your hearing as well as your vision with Specsavers Audiology. With 60 stores and counting, we are South Africa's largest audiology group. For a limited time only, buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right. Buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. Find your nearest store at specsavers.co.za. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
Get ready to make your life easier with TV License's new website features. We upgraded to the secure iVery 3D payment gateway and the ability to manage your account information, view, print, and download a detailed TV license statement. You can make website queries for an account and technical support, which has made things immensely easier. It is now a smooth, effortless process that can respond to all user inquiries quickly and efficiently. It is a great way to quickly get the help you need without worrying about a thing. Get started now and enjoy the convenience of TV License's new website features. Visit www.tvlic.co.za today. TV Licenses, do it for the convenience that matter.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
This program is brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
Asibambisani
Tsini na tsini. Ay khomaneng. Ha re tshwaraneng. Say and say. Side by side.
Good afternoon and welcome to Side by Side. We're here to support you with expert advice, valuable insights and practical guidelines to help you navigate the incredible journey. Brought to you by the National Department of Health, Ilifa la Bantwana and the SABC Education. Today we're talking about children's rights in early childhood, and we've just heard from our drama episode yesterday. Mom Cindy highlighted the fundamental rights of children and the importance of protecting these rights from an early age. Now we're joined by Professor Jace Pillay from the University of Johannesburg, South African Research Chair in Education and Care in Childhood, UNESCO Chair in Mental Health and Psychological Support for Teachers and Learners, and an educational counseling psychologist who will help us unpack this topic further. Together we'll explore what these rights mean in practical and how we can all play a part in creating a safe and supportive environment for every child. Prof, thank you so much for joining us today and good afternoon. What are some of the fundamental rights of children, and particularly in the context of early childhood?
Good afternoon to you and to the listeners. There are three basic categories of rights. One is provision rights, two is participation rights, and three is protection rights. Now, what I'm going to say to you is embedded in those three categories. So every child has a right to be named and cared for by a family. Some of the fundamental rights of children also include the right to survival and development, the right to education, the right to health care, and the right to be protected from abuse and neglect. In the context of early childhood, these rights ensure that children receive adequate nutrition, access to healthcare services, opportunities for early learning, and a safe and nurturing environment. Upholding these rights is crucial for promoting the overall well-being and development of young children and for laying a foundation that is strong for their future.
And how can parents and caregivers help to promote and advocate for the rights of young children?
Parents and caregivers can help protect and promote the rights of young children by providing a safe, loving, and supportive environment. This includes ensuring that children receive proper nutrition, healthcare, and early education opportunities. It is also important to listen to children, to respect their views, and involve them in decisions that affect them in an age-appropriate way. Parents can advocate for their children's rights by being informed about child protection laws and the resources that exist, and by speaking up against any form of abuse, neglect, or discrimination. Additionally, creating a community of support with other caregivers and organizations can help in promoting and safeguarding children's rights.
Prof, as much as we think we understand what abuse is, could you please help us understand what child abuse is and the different forms it may take?
Well, the child abuse is any intentional harm or mistreatment to a child who is under 18 years of age. Child abuse can take different forms, and some of these may all occur at the same time. The first one is physical abuse. Physical child abuse occurs when a child is purposefully physically injured or put at risk of harm by another person. Sexual abuse. Child sexual abuse is any sexual activity with a child. This can involve sexual contact, such as intentional sexual touching, oral genital contact, or intercourse. This can also involve non-contact sexual abuse of a child, such as exposing a child to sexual activity or even pornography, observing or filming a child in a sexual manner, sexual harassment of a child, or prostitution of a child, including sex trafficking. Emotional abuse. is another form, and this actually means injuring a child's self-esteem or emotional well-being. It includes verbal and emotional assault, such as continually belittling or berating a child, as well as isolating, ignoring, or rejecting a child. Another form is medical abuse. Medical abuse occurs when someone gives false information about illness in a child that requires medical attention, putting the child at risk of injury and unnecessary medical care. And last but not least, we have child neglect, which is the failure to provide adequate food, clothing, shelter, clean living conditions, affection, supervision, education, or medical and dental care.
Prof. Jace, thank you so much for joining us today. In closing, if I have concerns that a child may be experiencing abuse, what steps should I take?
Well, I think the first thing I want to point out is that child abuse is usually done by someone the child knows and trusts. And unfortunately, often it is a family member or other relatives. Sometimes it could be a teacher, a spiritual leader, or a community leader. So if you suspect child abuse, the important thing is to report the abuse to the proper authorities and do not delay in doing this. And I think also the important point here is that protecting every child in our community is a collective responsibility and duty.
And thank you for listening to Side by Side, the show that supports you to give your child the best possible start in life. Brought to you by the National Department of Health, Ilifa la Bantwana, and the SABC Education. Join the conversation with other caregivers on our Facebook page at Side by Side SA and look out for more great content. Join us again, same time next week when we'll be talking about contraceptives and dual protection methods.
Side by Side.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends, you need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Should we be concerned? What's happened?
We should really be concerned because Tiger is on the loose and he is a dangerous fugitive. He is being fingered for being the mastermind for the alleged deaths of some of the people, these illegal miners underground. He's being fingered for the assault and torture, as well as hoarding and keeping food away from other illegal miners. So it's important that we get to him, dead or alive. We need Tiger back.
Brigadier Atlanta Mate, the national spokesperson for the SAPS.
Missed it? Don't worry. We've got you covered. Find the podcast at safm.co.za. These are the weekend shows on SAFM. Music of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. The Jet Set Breakfast with Michelle Constant. Seasons with Khomotso KG Mweketsi. The Soundtrack of Your Life with Ernest Pillay. Weekend Soundowner Classics with Kutlwano Masote. Spotlight with Zai Khan. The Weekend with John Kherika. Rhythm of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. This is SAFM. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
So you would never guess what National Day today is. If I had to say render a guess for 50 runs, you would not guess this one. Apparently, today is National Pie Day. Pie, garage pie, pastry pie, that pie. I still eat a pie. I had one yesterday. I eat pies that went to private school, yes, from that store that charges 50 million for a pie, the store with the W. But I literally had one yesterday. There's just something about going by the counter and you smell that warm pastry and you just can't help it, right? And you get yourself a pie. And I wonder if you still eat pies. Are you a person who, was fond of pies back in the day? They were the easiest and cheapest thing when we were in school in my day. Really the easiest and cheapest thing. You could get yourself a quick pie with a quick cool drink and you've got a lovely meal, and then you've got the rest of your pocket money for you to pile up for the remainder of the week so that you could go treat yourself to things like Milky Lane and things like that. And isn't it funny, the older you get, one of my producers now, I was just having lunch and my producer said that she's got a juvenile palate. She said she's got a childish palate is actually the word that she used. She was like, I've got such a childish palate, because she was looking at what I was having for lunch and she couldn't understand. And so I remember back those days when we all had those childish palates of pies, and really they were the thing that would consume our lives. Then you get older and you kind of shun them for some reason, right? When you talk about them now, people almost raise their eyebrows and snark at you, why are you eating a pie out of all things? But I still very much love them. I really do. Especially from that place. I really do. And then the people in the Eastern Cape will tell you about shamrock. What do you know about shamrock? I said the people in the Eastern Cape, my producer, one of them who's from Bushbucks Ridge, starts nodding profusely. She's not even married to a Xhosa man. She's married to someone from Limpopo. Those two places are very far from Eastern Cape. But she's nodding about shamrock pies. I've never had them, but I know that they start a war every single time on social media. People will literally kill you, bite your head off if you say that there is a better pie in the Eastern Cape. I've got so many friends who come from the Eastern Cape. They've never brought me a shamrock pie, so I cannot testify to whether or not it is the best pie on the universe. I have no idea. If you are from the Eastern Cape and you do listen to the show, perhaps next time we're in Grahamstown, you can bring me something. We actually had a listener last year in Grahamstown, a wonderful gentleman, unprompted by any of our conversations. It was day 2 of us being in Grahamstown, brought me the most beautiful hamper from this farm stall that's halfway between Port Elizabeth and Grahamstown. And he bought us an assortment of things, and there was pies and boerewors and snackies and homemade fudge and different variations of popcorns and all kinds of incredible things. And literally this box was so big that it fed myself, my producer, my content producer, my 2 technical producers, and our technical support. There was about 6 of us that were there. And it was lovely. Ooh, Joanna had a pie last night. Is Joanna on the line? Johan, my Johan, you had a pie last night? You see, Johan is our technical guy. You see, we still love them. So it is National Pie Day today, and maybe we'll leave you on that scrumptious notes. Oh no, we've got somebody. Who's this? Uzanele Butelezi in Durban, and she sells pies. Is she on the line? Oh, is it a WhatsApp text? Oh, I can't see the text from here. Zanele Butelezi is in Durban, and she sells pies. I wonder, does it do well, Zanele? Does your business do well? I'm sure it does well. I am sure it does well. It's an ever faithful. Have you had a garage pie? I've never had a garage pie. I think that's where my elitism comes into play. Yeah, I've never had, it's either from like a farm stall, people who make them, or from that grocery spot, but I've never had a garage pie. Or maybe it's also because I don't drink. And it tends to be something that people eat in the middle of the night when they are hungry and starving. Let's go to WhatsApp quickly as we wrap up the show.
Hi, Bridget. Interesting and funny question. It's random that it's National Pie Day, but pie, it takes me back to high school, especially when I was in matric. Because I stopped taking a lunchbox to school because my mom had started just to give me pocket money. So I ate a pie 5 days a week throughout my matric year. And my favorite was pepper steak. So, and I randomly still do eat pie now. So, but I ate too much of a pie in high school, in matric in particular.
I don't have a favorite flavor. I mean, yesterday I let the lady at the W choose for me. I said to her, I felt like chicken, and she said, I don't like mushrooms, so I guess you're having chicken. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm having chicken. I've never discriminated. Anyone goes, it's fine with me. That is it for us this afternoon. We've got about 2 more minutes of the show left. We thought we'd just fill up at the top of the hour with this random situation around pies. But we've got about 2 more minutes, and Ashraf is standing by to come through with his show. And he's definitely going to have a lot on the agenda. Oh, now you'll decide to send us voice notes. Okay, let's go to WhatsApp quickly.
Hi, Bridget. This is Bukamoso Endless Fontaine. My favorite pie is definitely the pepper steak. Please, I love myself a good pepper steak because I love some chili things. And then my least favorite has to be chicken and mushroom. I honestly do not know what's going on there. I don't know the purpose of that pie flavor, everything. But yeah, to each their own.
So what I'm not doing is trying the smoky beef and cheese that one of you sent as a suggestion. Even if you dropped me a dozen at the SABC, that doesn't sound like a good flavor profile. Smoky beef and cheese. Akisho. Listen, we thank you for your last minute voice notes, but we ran out of time. We thank you for being in conversation with us today. Hopefully you enjoyed our afternoon together. We'll get to see you again tomorrow. Ashraf is standing by to take over for the rest of the day between 3 and 6. Inshallah, God willing, we do it again.
Thank you, Bridget. Top stories at 3. Mandasha speaks on the impact of illegal mining on the economy and concerns over the destruction of public works infrastructure. For SAFM News, I am Onde Lambana, and a very good afternoon. Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources Gwede Mandasha says illegal mining is a war on the economy. He was speaking during a media briefing in Pretoria on the mine's health and safety statistics for 2024.